Well, I just want to talk about bad things of trucking, and one of the bad things is waiting. And we've been ready after our 12-hour break at 8:15. It is now 9:30 and we're still waiting. But that's just one of the problems of interstate driving. Waiting. Now, if you're unloading, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. If you've done 10 hours and you have to do an unload, to have a break might be a good thing. Relax for a while before you start to unload. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're doing interstate, local, you'll probably still have to wait at some places to unload. Good thing about if you're local, you're on the hourly rate, you're going to get paid for it. If you're interstate, you probably won't get nothing for it. It's pretty much guaranteed 90% you won't get anything for it. Some companies do pay if you wait more than an hour, but they're very rare. So it's something to expect. And you get operations that'll say, if you've had an 8-hour sleep, they'll say, "Oh, just go back to bed." Well, that's a little bit difficult just to go back to bed. So if you're on a 14-hour day and you have to wait 2 hours, well, that just made it a 16-hour day. So you can get a little bit tired when you're on the road after you've been sitting around for a while. I've actually sat around, waited for trailers for 5 hours, so it does happen. But that's just part of truck driving, and if you want to do this sort of thing, you've got to be prepared for it. Now, unloads as well. Unloads, if you drive interstate, you may get a $30 payment to unload, which is probably about the normal $30 to $50. Now, if it goes into, if you go unload in an hour, $30 an hour isn't too bad. But if it goes into 2 hours, well, then you're down to $15 if you go on $30. In 3 hours, well, then you're probably not worth it. And other bad things of trucking is you're going to work weekends a lot of times. But that's like a lot of businesses now. If you're in retail, you've got to work weekends, have a roster system. So you're going to be, if you've got a family, you're going to be away from home. If you don't have a family and you're single, probably doesn't matter. Making sure this truck misses our mirrors. Yeah, if you're single, probably doesn't matter if you have a day off during the week and you're not home on the weekends. Or if your children are growing up and moved away. Well, I should say growing up and staying at home, but they can look after themselves, it probably doesn't matter. I worked a lot of weekends. And it's a bit quiet on the roads on the weekend. You can take your time a bit longer. If you leave on a Saturday, the freight doesn't have to be there until usually on a Monday. If you're going from Sydney to Adelaide or Brisbane to Melbourne, if it's got to be there Monday, you usually got to leave on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. It's just the way the freight runs. Most freight is express. So if it's Sydney Brisbane, Sydney Melbourne, Melbourne Adelaide, it's all overnight. So you got to be prepared to keep moving. You'll have your regulation breaks, but they wanted it there at a... Look, they're not going to push you, but they want it there at a certain time. They expect it there at a certain time. Between Sydney and Melbourne, it's about 10.5 to 11 hours, most companies. Now, you're going to be away from home at night. You're going to miss a lot of things like birthdays, anniversaries. If you've got children to do sports, you miss their sporting games. But that's like that with a lot of jobs. If you're work in the fire department, paramedic, something like that, you're going to be doing the same thing away, missing things. Just got to be prepared for it. That's just the way industries work now. So just be prepared for that as well. And as I mentioned, don't just do it. Don't just come into driving just for the money. Do it because you want to do it, because you like it. You want to give it a bit of a try. You can make some good money, as I mentioned before. You got to work for it. You don't get it for nothing. If you want to make the big money, you got to do the big miles. Be away for a week, 2 weeks at a time. And you got to get the kilometres in. And be prepared to be away. When you do your unloads, it's usually an extra, so you can probably pick up, if you do an unload and a pickup, you can probably pick up a couple $100 a week extra on top of your trip rate. There's a lot of regulations you got to put up with. You got to remember, if you're going to if you work in an office or work in a warehouse and you want to have, getting a bit behind, you want to work through your lunch break, which you're not supposed to do anyway, it's a health and safety issue. If you want to work through your lunch break, you can't do that in trucking. You got to have your break, otherwise it could end up costing you about $300 if you get caught. You got to remember the fines are quite high in trucking if you get caught doing the wrong thing or putting the wrong thing in a logbook. Not calculating your brakes or driving too far, going over your hours, and costs you a lot of money. I've known drivers to mess up their logbooks, their fault of course. Can't blame anybody but themselves for it, but they cost them $3,000, so just got to be onto that. Make sure you do the right thing, don't let the company push you if you haven't got the hours. A thing called chain of responsibility now, so everyone's responsible. They can't give you unrealistic times to do your job. And don't be afraid to say no. Operations staff, let's talk about them. Well, look, there's some good ones, there's some bad ones. You're not going to get on with everybody. So, but they can give you a hard time if you don't get on with them. Now, there's a minimum wage, and that minimum wage could be $900 a week, and you could be used to grossing $1,400 a week or $1,500 a week, or your minimum wage is $900, which would be 38 hours at $26 if you drive a B-double, I guess. So don't upset or try to get on with your operations staff. It can't always happen. You're going to have arguments with them. But they can sit you at home and give you a minimum wage. So instead of doing 5 trips, you might only do 3 trips. And they do evil things like that. They'll just say there's no freight tonight, and they'll just sit you at home. So that's another downside. We're expecting the money and it just doesn't happen. Sometimes unavoidable. Your health will probably suffer a little bit. You won't be eating as good as what you used to. You'll be eating at different times. You won't be eating as healthy as probably. You will eat a little bit while just stay awake, because you're going to get tired, and you'll probably eat something just to stay awake. So you'll be eating more. You won't be getting exercise. Good thing if you're driving, try and get in a routine and exercise. Go for a walk. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you just can't be bothered at the time because you just want to sit and rest for a little bit. So those things don't always work. So there's lots of things. Just don't go into it. Think about it before you go into it. Because a license is heavy, rigid license you've got to start off with in most states. So it's, you know, $1,000. So you don't want to be getting a license and then deciding you don't like it. You know, $1,000 is a lot of money to be throwing away. And then when you go to the next license, it's another $1,000 or more. So you really got to make sure you want to do it before you get into it. Just something to think about. Another thing is you won't be... nobody likes truck drivers. There's a lot out there that don't like us. We might deliver all their goods, all their white goods, their TVs, their groceries, what they get to the supermarket. They don't care. So you're on your own there. In society, you probably, everyone hates politicians and car salesmen and lawyers. Probably someone that robs a convenience store and terrorist. We're probably between the convenience store robber and the terrorist. And what people think of us. We're just out to cause disruption on the roads, hold everybody up, try and kill you, tailgate you. It's not the case in most cases, of course. We try and do the right thing, but sometimes you have to be a little bit arrogant on the road because you just won't get to where you're going to go. You have to push in. You have to cut across in front of cars. And another thing car drivers do is they slow down but not realising it. So the truck will come up close to them. They think they're getting tailgated. Then they'll slow down more and then they'll get aggressive and they'll put their brakes on and things like that happen. I actually had one guy that thought I was getting a bit close and he actually got his phone out and was filming me out the window. I was sort of thinking to myself, yeah, I'd like to see you take that to police and say, how did you get this footage? And he was hanging on to his phone out the window. So I don't know who would have been in more trouble there. And sometimes you're not tailgating, just when you see a truck in the mirror, and we've all done it, we're in the car, you see the truck in the mirror, it looks a bit closer than what it is. You've got to remember, we can see out the top of all cars, so we're probably on the brakes well before anything happens or they make a reaction. So that's the downsides. There is some good sides too. You are going to make good money. You'll make some other friends. You'll talk to other truck drivers will respect you, but there is still truck drivers out there that'll give you a hard time, and they'll also cut you off and they'll try and push you off the road, and there's no teamwork anymore in truck driving like it used to be. Well, that's about all. I better go around and check out my trailers. They said they'll be ready in 20 to 30 minutes, so I better go check that out. And I'll talk to you again later. And this is one of the other bad things of trucking is accidents, of course. Now, this truck's run off the road up here. We have heard the driver's okay, but not one of the things you want to happen.